Hey there, and welcome to Effin' Fridays with Francine, the podcast where we blend spirituality, entrepreneurship, and a whole lot of fun. I'm Francine Tirrell, owner of Forever Changed Coaching. I'm a spiritual mindset coach helping women make big-ass uplevels in their business and their life. I'm your host, and every Friday, we're here to light up your day with lively conversations with amazing humans who are shaking things up and making the world a better place. Get ready for laughter, inspiring stories, and a good dose of positivity as we chat with healers, dreamers, artists, coaches, and visionaries who are bringing their unique magic to the world. If you love mixing a bit of soul with a whole lot of joy, you are in the right spot. So grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's hang out together. Welcome to Effin' Fridays with Francine, where we are going to have some fun. Oh my God, I am so excited for today's conversation. Today, I have Angel Brunel with me. Angel is a dynamic speaker, facilitator, and consultant who brings humor and her lived experience to everything she does. Her background is in nonprofit leadership, team development, and human services, as well as her ambitious, risk-taking nature offer new perspectives that are grounded in best practices. She has spent over 25 years in leadership positions in nonprofit agencies and now divides her time as a communications strategist at the Boys and Girls Club in Lowell, Mass. That's Massachusetts, for those of you out of state, volunteering with other nonprofits, providing consulting and team building and team development services around the region, and playing music in a cover band. We're going to talk about that. Angel lives in Lowell, Massachusetts with her husband, Mike, and rescue pup, Rupert, and loves traveling, cooking, hiking, and gardening with both of them. Angel, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Francine.
So Angel and I met, we've known each other like in peripheral through some groups, but we met in person a few weeks ago. And our conversation, by the end of it, I was like, all right, we need to go on the podcast and talk about this. So we talked a lot about how play is so important, and we'll get more into that. But
Right.
I want you to just share with the listeners who you are, tell them a little bit about yourself,
Sure.
your journey to where you got here, and maybe some of the principles that you live by and why.
Yeah, so thanks. So I grew up in Ohio and spent most of the time there figuring out how I was going to leave Ohio. And so I had the opportunity when I was had graduated from college to move to Connecticut and work at a YMCA camp as a camp counselor. I never had pictured myself at the time working with kids, and I'd done some stuff outside, kind of liked it. And I just fell in love with it. And I think what I fell in love with was just the authenticity of just being in this environment where everybody was just there to build relationships, to have fun, to play. And that started the trajectory of my career. So I went from camp counselor to a program director to an outdoor center director, then on to an adventure education company where I spent 10 years in a lot of administrative positions, but also training folks how to facilitate, how to manage ropes courses, things like that, and facilitating groups myself. And then I moved to the Boys and Girls Club in 2015, where I was the director of development. So I was responsible for fundraising, but also still never lost that kind of joy and the love of just being around young people and how open they are to new experiences and trying new things. And so that kind of, I would say, if we're going to say, what is my underlying philosophy? That's it. It's this idea of novelty and that of possibility that our young people have, that I think oftentimes as adults, we get jaded, we get cynical, we forget how to do these things, how to play, how to approach the world with an open mind. And so I try to bring that to the things I do. And I've been fortunate enough to work for places that allow me to do that and really bring that sort of authenticity out.
I love that. I love that. One of the things that struck me when we had this conversation, and I don't remember if I shared this to you in person, but I'm going to share it with the listeners. I went to a healing school, energy healing school, for about 4 years, and then taught at the school for 4 years. And in the first year, one of the teachers asked me, and this was probably about 9 years ago, one of the teachers asked me, "What do you do for fun?" And I shut down. It was my dark night of the soul. And because I couldn't answer him, I
Mm,
had spent so much of my adult life doing and taking care of everyone and everything that I started to forget I forgot
yeah,
how to have fun. And my top values are connections, fun, and enthusiasm. That's one of the reasons I started this effing podcast, right?
right, right.
Because that's one of my top values, and I lost it along the way. So the healing school was really like coming back to that little inner child that's like, I just want to play.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right?
we're just taught that, productivity and being on and things are so important, and not realizing how much play and having fun fits into that, like fits
Yeah.
into our ability to move ourselves forward and things. And that's when I think people get stuck.
Why do you think it's so important? I know you one of your philosophies is to take time every day to play,
Hmm.
right? So, first, let's just take a step back. What is your definition of play, right? Because I know people are listening going, I don't have time to play. There's no way I can play
Right.
every day, right? But I'm
Right.
sure you don't mean like spending hours running around, but like what's your definition? Like what's your definition of play to be able to integrate that every day?
Yeah. So as I was preparing for another speaking engagement on this topic, I did a lot of research and trying to figure out what was the definition of play. And of course, there's a lot of different definitions. The one that stuck with me the most is from Dr. Stuart Brown, who works at the National Institute for Play, which I have to imagine must be one of the most
There's
fun
an
jobs
institute
out there.
for
There's an
play.
Institute for Play. Yes. And his definition is play is done for its own sake. It's
Oh,
voluntary, pleasurable, offers a sense of engagement, and takes you out of time. And here's the thing that was the most key. The act itself is more important than the outcome. The act
oh,
itself
I
is
love
more
that.
important than the outcome. So it's doing something for the sake of doing it without any expectations about what's going to happen at the other end or what other people are doing or anything. It's just you're in that act. And I think sometimes sometimes you hear that this flow state that we get into, it's kind of like that. It's like all you're thinking about is what you're doing in that moment. You're not worried about all the other stuff that's going on. And that's really when your brain goes to work and starts developing new neural pathways, and it starts learning and growing in really magnificent ways. So,
Yeah. What do you do for play? Like, what are some of the things that you do every
yeah.
day for play?
So I recently have, in the last year or so, taken up pickleball, which I know a
I'm the
lot of
only one in the
people are
world not playing
excited about.
pickleball.
I know it feels that way, right? But I think honestly, the reason that it's so popular, from my experience, is everybody I've played with so far really approaches it in that light. Like, we're just here
Mm,
to play. Like, the way that you connect with people, you play a game together, and then you always split up and you go play with somebody else. And I don't think anybody cares about the score. You keep score. Like, almost everybody makes some kind of silly little, like they hit it wrong or something, and then you have these great shots and you're really proud of yourself and everybody cheers, and it's just this, it's easy enough to pick up. And I think that's why people like it, because there's not like, it's not competitive necessarily. You don't have to worry about being beaten, that kind of thing. Puzzling, I think, is a great way to play. It's like, just you can get lost in just trying to find the piece that you're looking for, right? um for me, often yoga is part of my play, because again, it takes you out of the idea of thinking about all the things you have to do, and you can just focus on right now, this moment. So play doesn't have to be super active. It doesn't have to be, it can be with people, without people. It can, but again, it's the idea of just something that you're just doing it for the sake of doing it.
I love that. One of the things I do is I just break out in song. Sometimes my
Yeah.
husband, I get this side eye from my husband, like, oh God, I've married a crazy woman. But I know like we both enjoy it, right? I'll just,
Yeah.
this pencil, I'll sing about a pencil or whatever, right?
Right,
But
right.
music, right? If you put on music, I'm all in.
Sure.
I'm curious, with so much social media video in front of us, right? Like,
Hmm.
I can get on Candy Crush and call that play, but really it's more of an obsession, right? So like,
Right,
how do
right.
you like, because so many people are on social media and playing video games, would you also call that play, or does that kind of fall into another category of distraction?
So yeah, so that's exactly it. So I think when you're playing games online or when you're scrolling social media or whatever, that's your brain telling you, I need a break from the world as it is today. I need to not be doing anything like, and the idea with play is really more of taking in new information. So I like to describe it like this, like here's a way that we can all imagine it. So think about a time when you've seen a baby and the first time that they pick up a ball, right? And they realize their hand can hold this object, right? And that sense of wonder while they look at it, like, you know what I'm talking about? Like
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
just, right? Their brain is working hard saying, wow, my hand can hold this ball, right? They've just learned something new that they're capable of doing. And then think of that progression of when they let it go and then they realize I can pick it up again or I
Mhm.
can let it go again, right? Their brain is just they're there's all kinds of stuff going on there. These neural pathways that are developing because now they've learned to do that. The next time they see a ball, they know they can pick it up, right? And then think about a little bit later in their development when they actually learn if they do this with their arm, the ball kind of projects and maybe someone will go pick it up for them and bring it back to them, right? And that delight on their face, right? These moments. I was with my great niece last weekend and she was at that place where she had a little thing to throw the ball and she would kind of throw it to me and giggle. And then she had a moment where she threw it a little harder and I actually was able to catch it. Oh, the delight on her face, right? And that's play, right? That is just discovery. When you're playing
Right.
Candy Crush, you're not discovering anything new except for like maybe the next level of challenge, right? So it has this element of novelty and of trying something new, and that novelty lights our brains up. It just lights everything up and allows you to be open to learn new things.
So going back to that, right? So you've been playing I've been playing Candy Crush. You've been playing pickleball. You've been playing pickleball for a year,
Mhm.
right? Is it still new? Is there still a novelty in that? Like, when does that no longer become play?
So I would say with pickleball, the novelty is the people that I'm playing with. So
Okay.
there's new people every time, so we're getting to know. So this is another piece of it, and not that you have to play with other people all the time, but sometimes it's better when you do because that relationship, that connection that you have, that we're learning together, we're both, this is novel for us. It again, there's just so many opportunities for that the light up parts of our brain that just are not stimulated enough, right? And so but that we need connection. Loneliness is an epidemic,
Yeah.
especially for older people. Our ourselves, our minds, our spirits, everything, we crave connection. And when you have this opportunity to play, to have that novelty, to have that sort of, again, I think about the small child that throws the ball, even if they go like this and it just falls down, we applaud. We're like, yes, you did
Right,
such a good
right.
job, right? But think about that when we're adults. How often do we fail miserably at something and people go, woohoo, good for
You
you.
tried,
You tried
yes.
something new. And so that gives you the courage to try again and try again and try again, as opposed to I think what we create for ourselves is this mindset of, I don't want to try something new because I'm afraid I'm going to fail. I don't want to look silly, right? And so, kind of come back to pickleball again, people hit it in the most ridiculous ways, and everybody just goes, hey, nice try. Oh, I
Yeah.
did that the other day, right? So, nobody really cares if you lob it 3 courts over Or, I mean, I even struggle to just pick the ball up off the ground. Sometimes I don't know why it's
Right.
slippery. It's not, I don't, but it's just, I've done the goofiest things. And again, nobody cares. And it's, that's why it's, I like that almost feels like at this point a safe place. And I think that most of
Mm,
the ladies that I play with feel the same thing. Like they really look forward to it because it's probably the one time in the
yeah.
week where you're just doing something and you know that nobody cares what it looks
What,
like.
how you do it. What do
Yeah.
you think, or when, I don't know if it's a what or when, do we stop saying it's okay to play?
That's such a good question. And it's so funny to me. So, part of the work I do is team development, and um, I gather groups together, and everything from school groups to executive leadership teams and things, and it's kind of all the same. And if I say to a group of kids, I say, "Hey, we're going to play together today," they're like, "Yes, we're all in. Let's do this." If I say to a group of adults, "Are you ready to play with me?" They're like, "You're not going to make us do anything silly. I'm not going to look silly, am I? I don't want any of
Yeah.
that kumbaya stuff, you know?" And then before you know it, they're they are playing together. Now, typically where there's some kind of problem they're trying to solve that involves play in some way. And at the end of the day, they're like, "This was the best day I've had," because we have so few opportunities to play, and the learning is so rich. The learning is very, very deep because of that, because we're using our bodies, because we're connecting with one another, because we're learning with each other and doing something that's so novel. And it's really, really impactful and really fun to see. And I just, the question, when does that happen? I don't know. Sometime
Yeah.
between when we are like, when we are going out into the workplace, I'm not sure. It's the where the expectation becomes that we're not supposed to be silly, that we're not supposed to sing whenever we want to sing, or dance when we hear a good song, or pick up a ball and throw it just for the
Right.
sake of throwing it, right? It's 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 hard to say, but it's really exciting to see what happens when you let go of that, when people can
Yeah.
let go of that.
I do a lot of inner child work with my clients, right? Because oftentimes the things that are stopping them from having what they want have nothing to do with what's happening now. It's the
Right.
stuff that happened when they were children, and we
Sure.
talk about big T trauma and little T trauma. And I'm not usually, most of my client, big T trauma isn't usually what I'm working with. It's the little T trauma. It's
Mm-hmm.
the kid on the playground that said, "You look stupid," when you
Mm-hmm.
were 8, right?
Right.
And that
Right.
now has stuck with you. So I'm never going to look stupid again, right?
Right.
So I'm not going to play, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it's different for everybody, but it's always fascinating to me how when we really peel it back, it isn't this big trauma of, I came from this horrible, situation,
Mm-hmm.
blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
It's that little thing that happened in that, maybe, and it's not little because it has shifted the trajectory of what happened after, right?
Right.
But those little things of, "Oh, I look stupid. I dropped the ball and people laughed at me," right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah. Yeah.
stops us from doing the thing. "Oh, I'm never doing that again."
Right.
We have to have
Right.
that self-protection. I'm
Yeah.
curious, excuse me, how, in the ropes course that you do, how does playing help the teams, more adults than kids, but how does it help them solve these problems? So do they come to you with a specific, problem that they're dealing with in their corporation or their group? And then how does playing actually help them resolve that?
Sure. So, yeah. So, yes, to your first question, do they come with a problem? So, typically, before I work with a group, I do a pretty thorough needs assessment with them, and I talk about what are your norms already. What do you already have in place in terms of agreements between how we work together? What challenges might you be working to overcome? Sometimes it's that they've got a very particular project that they need to work on as a team, and they want to work better together. Sometimes there's actual conflict happening, and people aren't getting along. Sometimes I was with a group of sixth graders earlier this month, and they were just celebrating that they're moving on to middle school. And like, what does it look like to go into a whole new environment after being with the same kids for, 6 years? So everybody, they all come with something that they want to get out of the day. And so we typically have kind of a trajectory of the day where we just start with some really light um, activities to help break down some barriers, talk about communication and things, and then we get into a little bit of problem solving. And so, an example I can give is, and I'm going to relate it to the baby who's throwing the ball, is I might have two buckets, one that's empty and one that's filled with objects, and they have to figure out how to get all the objects from this bucket into this bucket without moving the buckets. And there's a bunch of rules about how they can do it, and then they figure it out. And the
Okay.
thing about it is that there's no right or wrong way to do it, right? And so often the question I get asked afterwards is, what's the right way to do it? Or what's the best you've ever seen somebody do this? I'm like, and that's part of the magic of it, is that the things that we do, there is no, again, we take away the expectation. There's not one way to do it. We give this very, very broad parameters, and the group has to figure it out. And through that, and I say oftentimes, like, I'm not teaching you how to toss objects from one bucket to another. That's not necessarily a life skill you need to learn. What you're learning here is how to solve problems together, how to listen to each other, how to communicate, how to try something, like, how uh, to say, oh, we tried this one thing and it didn't work, so we're going to try something different, or we think we can, or this did work, right? How do we take that idea of something so silly and novel and experimental, if you will, and you can see the light bulbs going off, the aha moments. And part of the reason this pedagogy works so well is it appeals to all of our learning styles. So you've got people who are auditory learners who like to talk and listen and hear things. You've got visual learners who are seeing something happening with these objects being tossed around. And you've got kinesthetic learners that want to just be in there doing the thing, right? And so there's this idea, you put forth a problem, and then we talk about it, we figure it out, we trial and error. It's kind of funny, it's silly. Again, we don't know what to expect. Like, I don't know what's going to happen when I start, so if we were on the elements, when we step on this big platform that looks like a teeter totter, I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm very surprised when all of a sudden weight shifts it, there's just this element of surprise, but it just, like, and I know I keep saying this, but it just is, it's lighting up parts of our brain that we don't get to light up very often.
Yeah.
The connection between people, the idea sharing, those type of things are not necessarily, don't come natural to us until we're in this environment where we're all in the same playing field. It doesn't matter if you've got the president of the company and the person who just started 2 weeks ago, you all have the same amount of information about how this works,
Right. I
and
love
you got to
that.
figure it out. So it creates this, and you never know who's going to have this brilliant idea. You never know who's going to be the person that all of a sudden becomes very vocal in the group, who's never said anything back at the office, right? So, and then when we get to, sometimes groups choose to do our climbing elements, and it's the same thing. It kind of just levels the playing field. For most people, it's very novel, everything from putting on the climbing harness to how the belay system works to actually working on the element. There's still in very much this cooperative team approach to it. And it just changes dynamics in such a significant way, that groups leave the course or the day, or even if we don't use the ropes course, sometimes we just do this in hotel conference rooms. You can just see it's almost in a few hours, just the growth that has happened among people. And
That's
it's
beautiful.
it's extremely effective. Yeah.
And
That's
I
what I
would
love.
imagine it also breaks down the hierarchy of a corporation, right? Like the president, CEO versus, the new person. Oh, we're still,
Yeah.
right? We can all be part of this team. We just bring different elements to
Yeah, and like I said, it
it.
kind of levels the playing field. So, for example, playing with a group of students, and maybe you have an expectation that the star football player is going to be a really good climber, but the star football player is afraid of heights, and so they need your support in a different
Right.
way that you're not used to supporting them. It, like, sort of breaks down also our preconceived notions about who people are or what they're bringing to the table, and allows us to be vulnerable and authentic and ask for help, which again are things that we're kind of told not to
Not to
do
do, I know.
as
Vulnerability is
adults.
some of the hardest work I've had to do in my life, and it's what I teach my clients, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
if we can't be open to ask for what we need, the expectation that others are going to know it, what we need,
Hmm.
just sets
Hmm.
us up and the other person to fail, right? So
Right,
we
right.
have to be willing to say, hey, I need help. Hey, I need fill in the
Hmm.
blank, whatever that is. I
Hmm.
love that.
Hmm. Yeah.
So can we talk about the band for a little
Of
while?
course, of course.
Oh my God,
Yes.
I can't wait to see you and see you live playing, right?
Yes.
So how did that come about? Have you always been musical? Have you always sung? You're the singer, right?
I'm one of the singers,
Okay.
yes, and I also play a couple of instruments, guitar and keyboard a little bit. So yeah, so I started singing when I was about 9 years old. I was in choral groups and things. I got very serious about it when I was in high school. I started college as a music major, um, and then I shifted, but I always stayed very involved in the music program. And from college until I was in my mid 30s, I, played a little guitar around the campfire. Again, I worked at camps, did, just kind of that it's a thread that's been in my life always. Um, my husband had a couple of very good friends that were in this band. They were looking for a singer, and they said, "Oh, hey, Angel, we heard you sing." And I said, "Well, I sing more classical stuff, not necessarily rock and roll." They said, "Well, let's just, come by and give it a try." And it just sort of worked out that I could pull it off enough that they let me stay in the band. That was, 13, 14 years ago.
Oh
So we've been
wow.
playing together since. And yeah, we have a lot of fun. We play everything from disco to 80s, one hit wonders to more modern stuff and 90s, grungy things. And we can do a lot because we have a male and a female singer, and we play out once a month, sometimes more, and have a blast. And the guitar player and I, over COVID, we started, just having a duo together. So I do that as well. That's a little bit more mellow, but it's just so fun. And it definitely, like, I envisioned myself when I was a kid, I envisioned myself as being kind of a rock star. So now I feel like I'm living out one of my
I love
childhood
that.
dreams, at
I
least.
love that. That's awesome. So what tips, if you were to if give our listeners 3 tips on how to find moments of playfulness every day, how would you invite people to maybe start exploring that, especially for those that maybe really are finding that hard or have the story of I just don't have the time.
Hmm.
What's something that they can just start doing to just invite
Yeah.
more playful moments in?
Yeah, so I think one thing is, first of all, just acknowledging the importance of it, that play should go on our to-do list, just like the household chores and things like that.
And I
That's
want to
it's
just like tell them why that's important. Why is it even important to play?
Yeah, so it's important to play because play is one of the best ways for you to keep your mental acuity, to continue to build neural pathways. I think we hear that, toddlers and infants, their brains are growing so fast and they're learning and stuff, but they actually never stop growing. Our brains constantly have the ability to develop new neural pathways. And if we don't do that, then we atrophy as we get older, just naturally. And so play is probably one of the easiest ways. And again, it comes back to the novelty of it, that your brain is going to continue to develop.
It's a lot.
Um,
It sounds a lot better than taking a lot of pills as we get older too, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think more and more research is going to continue to come and show that as people age, that playing and personal connections are what are staving off dementia and Alzheimer's as effectively as anything else, right? That keeping that brain active and learning and growing, as opposed to, again, scrolling, watching TV, where you're not really exercising that ability for your brain to grow. And then I also, it's a great stress reliever too. It's a way that you can kind of let go of other things. So I think first acknowledging that and saying this is important to put into my day. Think about something you already love. So I use sewing as an example. So I I learned how to sew when I was a kid, and years ago I picked it up. And again, and sometimes I'm like, I just want to, I really want to sew, but oh, I have this project and I'm at a stuck point and I don't know what to do, or I feel like I've got to set aside 5 hours to do it because I want to do something, like, what am I going to sew? I'm going to sew a new top for somebody, or I'm going to sew a dress or something. And in actuality, if I could just take that advice of doing something without any expectation of the outcome, like what if I just took two pieces of fabric and sewed them together and called it a day? That's playing, right?
Right.
Just that's just allowing me to play with the machine, to see what happens if I take this piece of fabric and this piece of fabric and do this. Ooh, look what happened. And maybe I'll want to do a little bit more. So thinking about something that already brings you some joy, but maybe you're putting limitations on it because you feel like you have to have a certain period of time to do it, or you aren't good at it, or you have to have something done at the end of it.
Well, and
You
there's
don't,
judgment, right? Like taking that judgment out. There is no right or wrong. What I'm hearing you say is there's no right or wrong way of
no,
playing.
no, not
Yeah.
at all. Not at all. And and then I think the last thing is, once you've been able to do that, sit with that feeling a little bit of how good it feels, especially if you're doing something with somebody else, and really acknowledging that was fun. That was good for me. Like that feels good, right? Just sitting in that feeling for a moment, it'll make you want to chase more opportunities, and thinking about, okay, now what am I not doing because I'm afraid I'm going to look stupid, or I'm afraid that I'm going to fail, or I'm afraid that I'm not going to be good at it. What am I like limiting myself? And then maybe think about giving this a try, right?
I love
Um,
that.
yeah, that's kind of my thought. And it's for me, it's like a muscle, right? And I I'm sure you like vision boards and stuff, and like I love vision boards, right? I love a good vision board. And I remember sometime somebody saying that, like having that vision, it opens your mind up to the opportunity when it presents itself, right? Because you have trained your brain to think about this. And I think it's the same thing with like playing and stuff, is you can actually train your brain to see an opportunity and say, I want to do that. I can give
Hmm.
you an example, a story of, and I don't know if I shared this before, but it's one of my favorite stories about play. Is I was in my place of work, but I was in a room by myself, but I could see out a window, and I saw my friend Renee walk by, and she had the biggest hula hoop I have ever seen. And my first thought was, I wonder if you can hula hoop with that. I really want to try to hula hoop with that. Like that it's huge.
I actually hula hooped this past weekend
I
for the first
yeah,
time, and I can't tell you how
yes,
many years. And I was like,
yes.
yeah, so it
And
was
so
fun.
I'm watching her, and I'm like, there's no way that somebody can hula hoop with it. It's just too big. And then I saw her hula hoop with it, and I ran out the door and I said, I want to try it, right? And again, I've been conditioning my brain this whole time to say that's something I want to try. And the significant thing about this was I needed to see her do it. So
Mm.
that's my other piece of advice, is if there's something you want to try, find somebody who already does that. So if you're excited about pickleball, say find somebody you trust and that you relate to that's doing that, and saying, I would love to play pickleball, tell me more about
Got
it,
it.
or
Right.
something, right? Because when we see people that we relate to doing the things we want to do, we believe that it's meant for us as well. Like, oh, somebody my age can do this, or somebody who's short or tall or whomever, like somebody you relate to, right? So it's a muscle almost that you're developing, this idea that I can see something and I recognize that that looks fun. That looks like something I want to do. And now I can let go of all that other stuff and say, I'm going to give it a try,
Yeah.
because I know the outcome on the other end is going to be feeling good, even if I'm not good at it.
That's beautiful. There's two things that are coming up as you're speaking. You mentioned vision boards, and I just want to share, sometimes we get stuck on how a vision board should look and how it should be done. I have been doing vision boards for years. I'm not always consistent, but I used to teach vision board workshops. I used to
Mhm.
have boxes and boxes and boxes of magazines,
Mhm.
and I finally got rid of them a couple of years ago, when I was doing the
Mhm.
COVID clean out.
Yeah, yeah.
So now when I do a vision board, I don't really have a lot of magazines. Well, only recent, I didn't do one at the beginning of this year, about, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, a month ago. I said, I really am inspired to do a vision board. But for me, when I did it with the magazines, it was an all day project, right? Because I wanted to get all the right pictures. I went into Canva and I just created it in like I've
Hmm.
never done a digital
Yeah.
vision board
Yeah.
before, but it was fun to just get in there and do the creative piece. And
Yeah.
then it's smaller than most are, but it's just, I had to get away from this is how a vision board should look and
Right.
feel and be. And it should take me I mean, I think one year I cut all the things and they sat on my dining room table for 3 weeks before I could put it right. Like, I mean, it was a really long project. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the beauty of the digital ones too is you could make it like your screensaver on your computer so that because the
Yep.
idea is you need to,
It's
interact with
there.
it on a regular
Right.
basis. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you a couple like it's I don't do one every single year. Sometimes I just take things off and put things
Yeah.
on and stuff. I'm in the band because of a vision board because I put, a picture of somebody playing guitar and stuff. And I was scared when I was invited to like, do you want to come try out for a band? That was a really scary thing. I'd never done it before.
Right.
But again, seeing that image of myself or that I saw of myself playing the guitar was like, this is your opportunity, right? It acknowledges that. Similarly, I had some pictures about traveling and things, and I love to tell this story about a very coincidental. My husband and I went up to visit his parents. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law had also gone up. None of this was planned. We don't normally go up to visit them except for holidays. We had not talked to Bobby and Aaron about being up there. And at some point during the conversation, my father-in-law says to Aaron, he says, "Tell Angel what you're going to do next year." And she said, "I'm going to climb Kilimanjaro." And without thinking, I said, "I want to go too." And it was because I had been looking at these images and seeing myself, seeing mountains, seeing Africa and things. And that was my opportunity to do
Mm.
this. Right. And so I guess I come back to this idea of it's not all or nothing. Like it's just this, there's a lot of things you can do to get yourself to this place where you're open, where we can shed that preconceived kind of idea of what, not being silly and that it's not okay to try new things and stuff. And we can slowly put ourselves in a place where when the opportunity presents itself, we're ready for it.
Right.
We don't have to sift through all that. I didn't have to say, "Well, I don't know, that sounds I did have these thoughts later.
Of
It sounds
course.
dangerous, it sounds scary, that type of thing. But in that moment, my brain knew that was for me.
Yeah. And I'm even gonna because I do a lot more somatic work. I don't think it was your brain that knew. It was your soul. It was your body.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
your brain was the one that was like, no, danger, danger, danger. But your body was like,
I
before she
believe that.
changes her mind, your
Yes.
body was like, before her brain realizes what we're about to do, we're saying yes.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And that's that, yeah, very clear mind-body
Yeah.
connection where one kind of might be driving at times.
Right.
And
Right.
who do you listen to, right?
Yeah, I want to share, I want to go back to the judgment piece. I was at a beautiful 4-day retreat this past weekend, and a lot of it was like, moving the energy in your body. So there was a lot of dance. And when we came back from breaks, there was a lot of dance. And oftentimes I found myself being the first one on the dance floor, right?
Mm,
And in the
mm,
past, right, I probably would have waited, right? But now I'm like, there's music playing, right?
yeah,
I want to be dancing. And I'm just going to invite people who do stand on the sidelines, right? Like, just check in with yourself. Like, what is that? There's music playing, so you will dance. Does it matter if you're the first, second, third, or 20th person on the dance floor? If
right,
you want to dance, just dance,
right, right.
right?
And I think I think for ourselves, recognizing that that judgment it doesn't serve us at all.
No,
The fear of judgment by other people, like what is actually the harm if somebody's like, "Oh my goodness, look at her dancing," like
because
that
that's
doesn't
them,
impact
not
me at
you. That
all.
has
That's
nothing
their
to do with
problem.
you.
That's their problem, right?
Right,
And when we can let it go from ourselves too, like catch ourselves being the judgmental ones, then again we're so much more freer to do those things that at the end of the day we're like really excited. We're like, look what I did today. Like
right.
and we don't feel like we've just lived another day in the same footsteps and everything like that. We have those
Yeah.
opportunities and we have those fun fun things and those, and again, connections. I always come back to the connections we make with others.
I love that. I love that. This has been so fun chatting with you.
Likewise.
At the end of every podcast, I do pull, well, I pulled the cards at the beginning, so I'm going to give I'm going to give Angel the first opportunity, but the audience, the listeners, there's a left card, there's a center card, and there's a right card. So decide which card is right for you. Maybe take a nice deep breath and just whatever pops in. And Angel, which is your card?
The left
The
card.
left. Okay, beautiful. All right, so this is the Pearl, Alchemy, the reward at the end, from grit to grace.
Oh, lovely.
Isn't that beautiful? What a beautiful card.
Yes.
And then the center card, Metamorphosis, embrace transformation. Things are different now.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of goes with yours, right? Go from
Yeah,
grit
yeah.
to grace. I love when there's kind of a theme here. And into the unknown, underworld, depth, courage, facing your fears. This is the right card. And I think that's
Excellent.
all kind of what we've been talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Allowing you to face whatever stories or fears that you're telling yourself so that you can embrace that change, so that you can have that transformation of having fun, right? Like life
Mm-hmm.
is meant to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah.
So, Angel, how can people find you? We'll put everything in the show notes, but if somebody wants to get to know you a little bit more, maybe even find out how you can support them to have more fun, have more play in their life, what would be the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Sure. So I offer one-on-one consulting with professionals, especially in the nonprofit world. But if folks are struggling with their teams or just stuck a little bit, I do one-on-one consulting. I do team development for any type of organization, company, group of adults. I do that through some other organizations. But you can certainly connect with me if
Connect
that's
with them.
something you're
Okay.
interested in and hearing about. But you can visit my website, which is Angel Brunel, my full name.com. And there I also have some helpful articles, as well as some fun stories of times when I've been playing and pushing myself outside of my comfort zone.
Nice. And can they also find information on the band on that
Oh, of
website?
course. Yeah. So the name of the band is Secondhand, and our website, Facebook, and Instagram are all Secondhand Band, written out NH. Secondhand Band NH.
Okay, perfect. I love that. Thank you so much. This has been
Thank
so fun to
you.
chat with you. So,
Likewise.
if this has sparked some interest and some curiosity about play, I'm going to invite you to go out today and play. And if I can help support you at all, you can find me at Forever Changed Coaching. I help midlife women make big ass up levels in their lives. So if you are a woman that is just stuck and if you're not playing and you want to play, we can probably help you do that as well. And I use a combination of energy work, EFT, Oracle cards, and coaching, mindset coaching to help move you forward. So reach out. I hope you've had as much fun as I have today. And I look forward to the next Effin Fridays
For
with Fran.
Fridays.
Have a
Nice.
fabulous weekend.